That's a good one. I like that. Dear Algebra, stop asking us to find x. She's not coming back. 3 out of 2 people have trouble with fractions. You get that? Should be 2 out of 3 people, right? Okay, I've seen t-shirts. I like the one about the x, though. I think that one's actually funny. All right. So what we're going to be learning how to do is, mainly we're going to be solving rational equations. And rational equations, we've already actually looked at this. We have an equation with fractions. You want to just think of these as equations with fractions, although the variable can be in the denominator. So when we have done this, and we did this like on your first test, what did you do if an equation had fractions?
You would make it so
you got rid of them by multiplying by the common denominator, okay? So first thing you need to do is you need to look at your 2 denominators. You got 5 and 6, and you need to figure out what the common denominator is. It may come right to you, it may not. Well, if you keep counting by 6s, eventually you get to 30, don't you? And since 5 goes into 30 evenly, that's your common denominator. So what we're going to do on this one's already fairly familiar to you, is we're just going to start by writing down the problem. I want you to just write down the problem, both sides. Now what we're going to do is we're going to multiply the left side by 30, and we're going to multiply the right side by 30. And what that's going to do is it's going to wipe out the fractions, and then we probably should have a simple equation to solve. Okay? And let's write the step. We're doing a distributive property, so you're going to do 30 times x over 5 minus, then you're going to do 30 times x over 6. And I think it's important to write that step until you get to where you can do that in your head, okay, equals 240. Like that. That's a distributive property, okay? Now, what are you going to do with the 30 over 1 and the x over 5? You're going to reduce, right? Okay, you're going to reduce because that's why we multiplied by 30 anyway. So 30 divided by 5 is 6. So that's going to give you 6x is the result of that. The next one you have 30 divided by 6 is 5. So that's going to give minus 5x. Then that's equal to 240. Okay, so you've gotten rid of the fraction. All you did is just 5 goes into 36 times, 6 goes into 35 times. Does that make sense? We already did that early in the semester, so this is not really anything brand new to you. And this equation is very simple. These are like terms. 6x minus 5x is just x. So you're already done. There's your answer is 240. Okay, like that. Okay? Now I'm going to check this one. I am going to use my calculator too to help with the checking on this a little bit, which you could do. So when we check the answer on this, what we're really going to do is we're just going to plug in, everywhere we see an x, we're going to put in a 240. So we're going to do 240 divided by 5 minus 240 divided by 6, and we're going to see if we get 8. Now I'm going to use the calculator to kind of help me with that just a little bit here. Okay, so to begin with, let's see what we got here. We got 240 divided by 5 is going to give 48. Okay, then if I do 240 divided by 6, that's going to give 40. Is that right? It is. Okay, so you can use your calculator to help you a little bit. Sometimes it's very easy to check you're right on an equation. Okay, so does everybody understand why I multiplied by 30? Now that got rid of the fractions. It's basically just because 5 goes into 30 and 6 goes into 30. That way we don't have any fractions after that first step. Now what's going to be a little bit different to you guys in this section is the variable. You're going to have variables in the denominator too. We hadn't done that yet. That's what you're going to be seeing in this section a lot. So the way I look at number 3 is if you look at this part of the problem and if you look at this part of the problem, if you just multiplied by x over 1, what would happen to the x? It cross out. Okay, so if we multiply by x, we're going to end up getting rid of the fractions. Okay, you multiply by whatever it takes to get rid of those fractions. So what you want to do is you want to write down the problem to start with, like we did on the first one. Just write it down. Don't do anything with it. Okay, then what we're going to do is we're going to multiply both sides of this equation by x. So I'm going to put x over 1 here, then I'm going to multiply this side by x over 1. You can put that x in front or at the end of the, if you want to, like that. Then we're just going to see what happens on the problem when we do this. All right, what happens on the x over 1 times 19 over x? What do you get? You get 19, right? Okay, the x's are gone. Okay, now you're going to do this. You're going to do a distributive property, so you're doing 4 times x, which is 4x, right? Then you're going to do minus 1 over x times x over 1, because again, you're doing a distributive property. What happens to the x's? They cross out. So you would end up with 19 equals 4x minus 1. So you have gotten rid of the fractions by doing that. Now it's just a standard equation. Okay, everything got multiplied by x. So now what you would do is you want x to be by itself, so you can add 1 to both sides. Okay, that's going to give 20 equals 4x now. And what's the answer to the problem in your head? 5. 4 times 5 is 20. Or you can divide both sides by 4, so you would get x is equal to 5, like that. Now I'm going to check this one on the calculator just for something different. You have 19 over 5. I'm going to plug my answer in, and we're going to see if that's equal to 4 minus 1 over 5. Well, actually, let's not use calculator because students need to review fractions. They always do. Okay? So what you need to do is you need to get a common denominator between 1 and 5. What is that? 5. So multiply this by 5 over 5. Okay, and then what that's going to give you is 20 over 5, which is 4, by the way, minus 1/5. So what's 20/5 minus 1/5? 19/5. Remember, you keep the denominator, subtract the numerator. All right, the reason I multiplied by x on that is because it got rid of both of those fractions. So the 19 came down, the 1 came down, but the 4 got multiplied by x. Does that make any sense? Yes? No? Okay. All right, so I'm going to let you do a couple of problems here. I'll go ahead and start working on the next 2. Okay, so after a little work, I think we all eventually got this one. So what you're doing on this is you're taking 4x over 9, and you are multiplying that by 36 over 1. I do want to mention a couple things because some of you are doing this the hard way. Then you do the 8, and you multiply that by 36. Then you do the 1/4, and you multiply that by 36. Okay, what I saw a lot of you doing is going 144x over 9. And then you didn't know what 144 over 9 is, which I can understand. It's easier to do this, right? 9 goes into 36 4 times. So what's 4 times 4? See, it's easier to process that in your head, okay? Then 8 times 36, I think that was 288, is that right? Okay. And then same thing here. 4 goes into 36 9 times, so you're equal to 9 like that. Okay, now some of you got that, and then you struggle to solve your equation. Anytime you're solving an equation and you're stuck, hey, what are you doing? You're getting x by itself. So what do you got to get rid of? 288 and 16. So you want to subtract 288 from both sides, okay, to start with. Okay, then that's going to give 16x, and that's negative 279. Then what do? Divide by 16, and then you're done. I don't want decimals, because decimals are not exact. This is exact. That's what I want. Weird looking answer, but that's the answer. Okay? All right, everybody do okay with that? Okay? All right, the next one is you're just going to multiply by x. All right? So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to, write down the problem, and I'll tell you what the most common mistake is on this problem is students don't do anything with the 6. Now see, you're multiplying everything by x. So you're doing a distributive property. So you got to have that x, that 6 by x also. Okay, a lot of you did that. Okay, now cancel stuff out. That's going to be 41. This is going to be 6x minus 1 like that. That's the key, is to get that on your paper, and then you can solve the equation. Okay, so again, if you're in doubt, x needs to be by itself. Don't touch x. Get rid of 1 and get rid of 6. So we're going to add 1 to both sides. So that should give you 42 equals 6x. And then you can divide both sides by 6. So what did you get as your answer, hopefully? X equals 7. Okay, like that. Okay?
Can we do the check on number 4?
Yeah, I will, if you'd like me to. Sure, I will if you'd like me to. I'm not intimidated. Okay, let me show you how you would check this. Now, I'm not going to use my calculator or anything. You would do 4 times the answer, which is negative 279 over 16, all over 9, plus 8, and see if that's equal to 1/4. It looks kind of nasty, but it isn't. Here's why. Okay, now I'll use my calculator for a few simple calculations on this. But first of all, 4 over 16 reduces to that, 1/4. So what you would end up with is negative 279 over 4 all over 9 plus 8. Okay, and a lot of students at this level of class do not know how to handle this. Here's how you handle it. You say negative 279 over 4 divided by 9 plus 8, because that's what it is. When you're over 9, you're dividing by 9. How do you divide by a fraction anyway? We have learned that. Flip the second one and multiply. So you're going to have negative 279 over 4 times 1/9 like that plus 8. Okay? Now, let's see. How did I tell you if a number is divisible by 9? Add the digits up. Check this out. 7 plus 2 is 9. 9 plus 9 is 18. So it does divide by 9. Okay, so we're going to do that. All right, now I have no idea what it is, and I'm feeling like I'd just like to use the calculator on this one. So let's go 279 divided by 9 is 31. Okay, so this is going to give negative 31 over 4 plus 8 over 1. Okay, now I'm going to get a common denominator, so I'm going to multiply by 4 over 4 to get negative 31 fourths plus 32 fourths. Look what I get. You could do that. Of course you could. Okay, that's how it checks. They all do. Okay, it's great exercise. If students would just take a little time sometimes to do that, they would get their arithmetic down, because that's a good problem right there to get your arithmetic down. Okay. Okay, so let's move on to the next couple of things. And let's look at this. What's the common denominator between 8 and 7?
56.
56. And if you don't know what the common denominator is, you can get your calculator out and do 8 times 7, and you'll get 56. If you multiply the two numbers, it'll always give you something that'll work, but it won't always give you the smallest common denominator. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to write down the problem. So just start by writing the problem down. And like the last problems, we're going to multiply both sides by the common denominator. And I'm going to teach you this way. I'm not going to go through what we call cross multiplication, because you can run into problems if you do cross multiplication on some problems. Okay, so what I'm going to do is we're going to reduce. So what's 56 over 7?
8.
That's 8. So that's going to leave you with 8 times x plus 6. So we got rid of the fraction. Okay, what's 56 divided by 8? 7, right? So that's going to leave you with equals 7 times x plus 7 like that. Okay, then I'm just going to move it over here and finish. So see, again, we're doing that cross cancellation. The reason we use 56 is because 7 and 8 divide evenly into 56. Okay, now you're going to do a distributive property, so you can go ahead and do that. So that's going to be 8x plus 48, and then the right side is going to be 7x plus 49. Then you're ready to solve the equation. Now, what the situation you have on this equation is, you have variables on both sides. You don't want that. And remember, one of the things I taught you how to do is just rearrange. If you want to rearrange, it's just as easy on this problem to leave the 8x where it is, move the 7x to the other side so its sign changes like I taught you, leave the 49 where it is, and move the 48 like that. I find it's just as easy to rearrange like that. So you're going to get x equals 1. Problem done. Okay? Now, if you look at this one, you can check this in your head. Check this out. What's 1 plus 6? 7. What's 7 divided by 7? 1. What's 1 plus 7? 8. What's 8 divided by 8? 1. They're both 1, see? There are times when it's easy to check in your head. Okay? All right? So we multiplied by 56. Any question about that? Okay, now the next one, if you don't do it the way I'm going to show you, you'd make the problem excessively complicated. What do you notice about these two denominators, if anything? They're backwards. Good. Okay, so we talked about that. So remember, what we learned how to do was if you had a 5 minus x, you could change it around as long as you did what? Put a negative 1 in front. Okay, so that's what I'm going to do, and then the denominators are going to be a little bit easier to work with. So we're going to start by saying, with using that, applying what we learned in a previous section, I'm going to leave the x minus 5 as it is, and I'm going to turn around the other one to x minus 5, and what that's going to do is, again, that puts a negative 1 there. Okay? But the smart thing to do would be to just move that negative to the top. Okay, you can just move it to the top. It doesn't have to be on the bottom. So just move it like that, and see if you do that, your denominators are the same, aren't they? Okay, now we learned how to do that, so flip it, and that introduces a negative. Okay, so now I'm going to write down the problem. We now have x minus 1 over x minus 5 is equal to negative 5 over x minus 5. All right, now what would I multiply both sides of this equation by to get rid of the fraction? X minus 5, exactly. So your common denominator is x minus 5. Okay, so I'm going to multiply this side by x minus 5, and I'm going to multiply this side by x minus 5. Okay, like that. Okay, by doing this, the problem will be very simple. That's going to cross out, leaving you x minus 1. Same thing happens on this side. That crosses out, leaving you negative 5. And that's it. Okay, so what we're going to do is add 1 to both sides. So we'll have, as an answer, x equals negative 4 when we do that. So if you have that backwards subtracted denominator, change one of them. Don't change both of them. I see students do that all the time. That defeats the purpose. You want them both to be the same. Does that make sense? Okay, based on what we learned in a previous section, we learned how to handle that. Okay, so I'll let you work on the next two. Okay, just very similar to what I just did. And I'm kind of taking you through different levels of these problems. Okay, so I guess most of you multiplied by 48, so I'm going to do that. But 24 is smaller. Okay, so it doesn't really matter what you multiply by as long as 8 and 6 go into it. Okay, so I'll show you the most likely mistakes that I tended to see on this. Everybody got rid of the fraction, okay, that was not an issue. But solving the equation was an issue out there a little bit. Okay, so what you do is 48 over 8 is 6, so that would be 6 times x minus 6, and then you have 48 over 6 is 8, so that's 8 times x plus 6 like that. Now, the person who did 24, you ended up with probably 3 times x minus 6 and 4 times x plus 6. Same thing, okay? Now do your distributive property, so that's going to be 6x minus 36, and that's going to be equal to 8x plus 48 like that. All right, now, and I think most of you were just trying to move things from side to side, which is fine. So I think most of you left the 6x, and if you move the 8x, what do you do to its sign? So that's what some of you didn't do. Then if you leave the 48, you don't touch that, but if you move the 36, you got to change that sign. Okay, so that's something you got to be aware of. So this would be negative 2x, and then if you add that up, that's going to be 84. Okay, now you can divide both sides by negative 2, so you'd end up getting x equals negative 42. Okay, like that. All right? So I think we didn't have too much trouble with that. Just there were some sign issues that I saw with that. Any question on that? Okay, the next one is the one I think is tricky for students. So you're going to turn this around into an x minus 7. Okay, so I'm just going to leave the first one alone. Don't touch the first one. And go like this. So if I turn the x minus 7 around, what must I do? I must put a negative 1 there. Okay? Now you've got to make sure you understand this. I can tell some of you don't understand this. Notice that if you do negative 1 times x, you get negative x. And if you do negative 1 times negative 7, you get 7. Okay, so it checks. If you didn't put that negative 1 in front of there, then you're totally changing the problem. So then the next best thing to do would be just take that negative that we put in the denominator and bring it to the top. So I'm going to leave this alone and write this as negative 4 over x minus 7. Now you can jump directly to that step if you're comfortable and understand what you're doing. Now what do you multiply by? X minus 7. That's what you're trying to get rid of. So I think once you get past that step, then you shouldn't have any trouble with that. So that's going to give x minus 2. And then this is going to give negative 4. That's what you should have got. And then you add 2 to both sides. So what answer did you get? Hopefully you got negative 2. Okay, so what happened really by switching that around, what happened to that 4 ultimately? Came negative 4. That's what happens. Okay, you introduce a negative into the problem. Okay, like that. Once you get to that, you probably will be okay. All right, any questions with that? Okay, now we're kind of building up to the next kind of thing we learn is going to get a little bit more complicated as we go. But when you're working with a problem like number 10, the first thing that you want to see is you want to factor any denominator that factors, you need to factor it. If you don't factor it, you won't get anywhere on the problem. Okay, so what I want you to do first is just write down the problem and spread it out. Okay, that's important too. And then what is the common factor you're going to take out for 4x minus 16? You're going to take a 4 out. So you have 4 times x, and then 4 times 4, then spread it out and get the 2 like that. Okay? Now, the way I like to kind of teach this is it's all about getting rid of fractions. Okay? If you're going to get rid, let's just look at this thing in the top here. Now, one thing that you are going to notice on here, the 4 over 4 crosses out. You might as well do that now. That's correct to do that. Just cross it out. Okay, that's 1 over x minus 4 like that then. You can do that. Okay. Now, what would I multiply everything by that would get rid of x minus 4? X minus 4, exactly. So what you're going to do, and you have to do this to each part of the problem, is you need to multiply each part by x minus 4. And guys, you're not getting a common denominator. Don't confuse that with what we did in section 6.2. When we got a denominator, we did the same thing the top and bottom. You are getting rid of fractions, okay? Now, what happens is you only multiplying those numerators by x minus 4, so they cancel, okay? So what you're left with here is a 1. What you're left with here is also just a 1, right? Okay. Now on the right side, you go ahead and do a distributive property, so you get 2x minus 8 like that. Okay, so everything's multiplied by x minus 4. We've gotten rid of the fraction. Okay, does that make sense so far? Okay, now this is going to be 2 equals 2x minus 8. Okay, you can add 8 to both sides if you want to, or you can do this. You could just move it and say 2 plus 8 equals 2x. So that's 10 equals 2x. Then you can divide both sides by 2, so the answer appears to be x equals 5, like that. Okay, so what you're going to do, the rest of the problems I'm going to show you in this section, you're going to factor the denominator, figure out what to multiply by to get rid of all the fractions, and then solve from there. That's the idea. And if you don't factor, you're not going to make any progress in the problem. So that's what you want to look for first, is that. Okay? Okay, so let's move on to the next one. Okay, do any of these denominators factor? M squared minus 16. What kind of factoring problem is m squared minus 16? Difference of 2 squares. That's the one that you go m and m, 4 and 4, plus and minus. That one's going to keep showing up, so you need to be able to spot it fast. Okay, so what you want to do is seriously, you want to spread your work out. You're not going to do anything except spread your work out and then factor this thing. That's a difference of 2 squares. So you're going to go 2 parentheses, m times m, 4 times 4, with a plus and minus. I can tell some of you aren't spotting that. You need to get to the point where you do spot that. That's one of the factoring types of problems we found. Okay, now let me ask you a question. If you wanted to get rid of an m plus 4, how do you get rid of an m plus 4? You multiply by it. So everything is going to have to be multiplied by m plus 4. You don't have any choice. All right, got to do that. Okay, but what else do you got to get rid of? M minus 4. How do you get rid of m minus 4? You multiply by it. So everything at the same time has to get multiplied by m plus 4, m minus 4, like that. Okay, now one of the keys to doing your homework correctly is to see how I spread my work out. If you don't do that, it's going to be all crunched up and you're not going to be able to see what's happening. Another trick is to, highlight what you're multiplying by, use a different color pen or something like that. Okay, now we just start going through and canceling. So on this, it's the m minus 4s that are going to cancel out. So what are you left with? You're left with 7 times m plus 4. We got rid of the fraction. The next one, the m plus 4s cross out. Write down what you're left with. Minus 9 times m minus 4. Okay, then you go to the next one. Both things cross out. So you're left with an 8. Now you're ready to solve your equation. That's a pretty standard equation that we've done before. Okay. So what do? You do the distributive property. You want to go ahead and do that. So you'll have 7m plus 28 there, minus 9m plus 36 is equal to 8, like that. Okay, collect like terms. You do have like terms, put them together. So 7 minus 9 is negative 2m. Put those together. Then you have 28 and 36, which is 64. So that's plus 64 equals 8. Okay. Now you want to get m by itself, so you need to get rid of the 64. So we're going to subtract 64 from both sides. Okay, so that should leave us with negative 2m equals negative 56. Okay, like that. Okay, so now we're down to negative 2m equals negative 56. So now you want to divide both sides by negative 2. And the answer is positive 28. Half of 56 is 28. 2 negatives divide to make a positive. So that's your answer to your problem. Okay, so the key thing is I had to factor the denominator to figure out what to multiply by. Okay, and by doing that I got rid of the fractions. The whole key to these problems is to get past the first step, because then you won't have any fractions, then you're doing things you've already learned how to do before. Okay, does that make sense? Okay, all right, we're going to keep doing some of these because we're going to look at different situations that show up on these now. Okay, what's the first thing I should do on number 12? Exactly. You got one thing you can factor. Okay, you can't factor 5x, you can't factor x plus 1, but you can factor 3x squared plus 3x. You take a common factor out. And you want to spread your work way out. So we're going to have 6 over 5x minus 1 over x plus 1 is equal to 1 over, now take the 3x out like this. And these problems are designed in such a way that it's highly likely that what goes in these parentheses is one of these. Okay, so you're going to end up with x plus 1 if you take that out. Okay, and seriously, if you factor something on this problem, make sure you did it right. Don't proceed unless you've made sure the factor is right, because you're wasting your time otherwise. Okay, so let's identify what we're trying to get rid of. One thing we're trying to get rid of is an x plus 1. The only way to get rid of an x plus 1 is to multiply by x plus 1. What else are you trying to get rid of? A 3 and a 5. What's the common denominator of 3 and 5? 15. Okay, and you're also trying to get rid of an x. The only way to get rid of an x is to multiply by x. So if you multiply everything by 15x, x plus 1, you're going to get rid of everything. And if you choose the wrong common denominator, you're going to know that. So I'm just kind of looking at x plus 1, got to multiply by x, then the common denominator of 5 and 3 is 15. So you're going to multiply each part of this equation by 15x times x plus 1. And you only do that to the numerator. You do not do it to the denominator too. Okay, so we're going to get this kind of put together. And then the whole key is, to me, is getting past this first step. If you can get the first step done correctly, you're going to be in business. Okay, so look at the first box here. What do you see that cancels out? Definitely the x's cross out, right? How about 15 over 5? 15 over 5 is 3, right? So you're going to go 15 divided by 5 is 3. Okay, that's the best way to do it. Now write what you're left with. You're left with 6 times 3, which is 18. Then you're left with an x plus 1 like that. Okay, go to the next stage. What's going to happen to the next stage? X plus 1's cross out. Okay, what we're left with is 15x, like that. Okay, now go to the right side. What cancels, it looks like, is x plus 1, the x, and then the 15 over 3 is 5. So you're going to do 15 divided by 3 is 5. So that one is just left with a 5 like that. That's the key to the problem, is we got rid of our fractions. Now we're ready to solve. Okay, does that make sense? Now it's very key on these problems. You got to write your step like that. You got to write it real clear so you can see what's going on in the problem. Okay, so now from here you would do a distributive property. That's 18x plus 18. Bring down the 15x equals 5. Combine your like terms. So 18x minus 15x is going to be 3x. Plus 18 is equal to 5. Now you can subtract 18. You're trying to get x by itself. So we subtract 18 from both sides. And that would give 3x is equal to negative 13. Then I divide by 3. And that's the answer. Okay, that would be a real fun one to check. I'm not going to take the time to do that, but I could. Okay, you guys got any questions about what I did? Okay, like anything else, you just got to roll up your sleeves and see if you can do it. So I'm going to put you to work on rest of the class. Let's kind of work on the next 3 problems and give you a little extra time to see how you're